Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, and today we're going to be taking a look at some absolutely ridiculous combat footage coming out of the Kherson offensive. This is, of course, brought to us by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. So, of course, it is basically Ukrainian Armed Forces, trying to think of the non-demonetized version. We'll say smoking some Russian cigarettes. Let's get into it. And if this is monetized, great. If not, well, this probably is not going to be monetized. But we often think of cyber threats as focusing on military or government systems. But in modern warfare, anything can be a target. We've seen hostile countries target banks, healthcare systems, utilities, and media. Often these cyber threats will fund their operations by selling data or engaging in ransomware attacks. Regular internet users like you and I are often caught in the crossfire. That's why I wanted to talk about today's video sponsor, Atlas VPN. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. You can get a 3-year subscription for just $199 a month with 30-day money-back guarantee. Time is running out, so get your link in the description below. Atlas VPN encrypts your web traffic through a secure tunnel, preventing spying and hiding your IP address and online activities from unwanted observers. Atlas VPN's Data Breach Monitor automatically scans leaked databases and informs you if your personal data, like your email or social, has been leaked online. Atlas VPN also blocks malicious ads, trackers, and alerts you if someone is trying to steal your data. Atlas VPN is also easy to use. Just open up the app, turn on the VPN, select your country, and boom, you are browsing from another location. You'll be able to see price deals available only in that location, like deals on hotels or airlines. You can also access geo-restricted content on streaming services like Netflix or Hulu. Atlas VPN also offers high-speed protection for gaming or streaming. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. Get a 3-year subscription for just $199 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So click the link in the description to get your deal today. Okay, let's just watch this complete madness. This is just combat in the 31st of August, which, as you guys are aware, what is the start of the Kherson offensive. This is really one of the first times Ukraine is taking the fight to Russian forces. Of course, it's not going to look like a U.S. style offensive, right? The United States and a lot of Western countries rely on mechanized forces. They rely on high levels of command and control. They rely on air superiority to create lightning strikes, lightning breakthroughs, to shatter enemy lines, create chaos in the backfield, and exploit that chaos, that failure of command and control. The U.S. really can only get away with it because it has super high-tech forces, and it has this weird, very American doctrine where the people in command are more like herding cats. Every unit, in a lot of ways, gets its general objective. They say, hey, battalion commander, hey, company commander, all we want you to do is just seize this village. And then they figure out every other facet of it. Frontal attack, flank, jump around back, blow it up with tanks. They don't care, as long as it doesn't violate the law of war. It's called mission command, and it's you set your intent, what you want, the end state you want to see, and then you let these commanders figure it out. And it's powerful because oftentimes the very front lines, the chaos that it creates, a commander back in if you have a Russian style command, they rely entirely on their generals, their colonels and above, to make every single decision about how operations are being conducted. And in the absence of orders, things grind to a halt. In contrast, right, American style fighting, American style offensives, in the absence of orders, you will think about what your commander said their intent was, and you will make your best guess on how to achieve your overall objectives. So you would have a tank commander who, let's say, has a successful breakthrough. A Russian tank commander would stop once they've achieved the breakthrough. An American tank commander might sit there and go, well, they wanted me to seize this village, but they said the overall objective was to seize the next town over. So there's no enemy resistance. I'm just going to tell them where I'm going, and I'm going to keep going. And that's really unique, and it's the reason we can cover that, and the technology is the reason we can cover like 50 kilometers a day in seized territory. Ukraine's doesn't have the tech to do this, and it's not totally clear their armed forces have the training to do so, right? There's still a lot of a conscript army. So instead, you're going to see a very different offensive. You're going to see something that takes bite-sized pieces one at a time, seizing territory by the kilometer, not by the dozens of kilometers. But we'll see just how much work these guys have been doing, right? They've been targeting Russian tanks. You can see this tank is in a concealed position, and was probably lying in wait for Ukrainian forces. But again, one thing the Ukrainian forces have gotten really good at is their sort of miniaturizing joint, what with the US we call joint operations, using your air assets to enable your ground forces. In this case, the US classically uses its fighter jets and its reconnaissance planes and its big UAVs as those air enablers. The Ukrainians have said, hey, we can just buy drones and literally have a little drone air force scout ahead, right? Feed locations to our artillery units, who will then destroy this tank, meaning there's nothing lying in wait for our infantry. Here we go. We could see this is a pretty standard Russian defensive trench. Let's point some things out. I might have to skip ahead because just trust me, I'm going to have to skip ahead. But one of the things that's really flawed, and I find it really interesting, that the Russians seem to have stopped doing, right? When they had classically trained, when they had their A-team early in the war, right? Their armed forces who had gotten proper instruction, they knew that a good trench line is going to have some zigs and zags. And the reason it wants to have zigs and zags is because, let's say a grenade or another explosive detonates right here. Where's that shrapnel going to go? Well, it's going to go straight down this path because look, it's a straight line and it won't get broken until it reaches probably this little bend here. Because again, think, shrapnel can go in a straight line, it can't curve. So as long as you put a bunch of curves in your trench line, it's going to be way harder for a single direct hit to take out a lot of troops. But you can see Russia seems to have stopped doing that, and I think it's an indication that they're relying on conscripts with less and less training who simply believe that, like a movie, the trench line should be straight. And of course, as you guys know, movies aren't actually reality, and oftentimes those straight trenches you see in movies are done so because it can be really easy to like shoot a shot of like a trench, but in reality, even in World War I, those trenches were zigged and zagged. So it's just a testament to the fact that, okay, we are just gonna, you guys can imagine what's gonna happen here, but YouTube is YouTube doesn't like that moment right there. See it? Yeah. Right, so you can infer what has happened, and we talked about why exactly they dropped even a small piece of ordnance without any zig or zag. It's gonna spread throughout the entire trench very easily. Okay, now we've got this is a. What's interesting is it's very unstable. So I think this is a commercial drone shot, but it could be actually it could be someone holding it, right? Because again, it's tough to say. Could just be windy conditions. But you can see, again, they're using these drones to scout ahead. They are delivering artillery strikes, and bam. Whew, that's high drama, right? Clearing out these tanks that are lying in wait. This is one of the ways that sometimes, there's a general rule in tactical planning. And in operational planning, really. And that is when you are on the offensive, you want to have a 3-to-1 ratio over your opponent. But this is a rule of thumb. This is almost the tactical version of an old wives' tale. When you look at the historic data of battles, you realize that numerical superiority is an advantage, but being on the defense is actually not necessarily an advantage. And that's because that both, you can imagine, defenders and those on offense have different, trade-offs. Again, here's a classic example. How hard is it to find a tank on defense? A tank on defense sits in a defensive position, establishes a field of fire, and remains there, meaning that the enemy can take its time, scout, find the tanks, and finish them. In contrast, a military on offense is always moving. So even if you have the location of Ukrainian tanks, by the time you could get them to your command, to your headquarters, run a fire mission, the tanks will have already moved. Unless, of course, you've fixed them in location, you've blunted the offensive. And so it can, in some ways, be advantageous to be on offense, especially because when you're on defense, right, you have to be ready for an attack 24/7. But when you're on offense, you choose the time and location that you attack. So you choose the spot, the moment where the enemy is at their most vulnerable. And so it can, in some ways, be actually resource intensive to be on the defensive simply because you have to continuously maintain a high level of readiness, even if you don't necessarily have to move. So these are just some things to think about when you're looking at offense and defense in a conventional war like this. Let's keep it moving. Okay. All right, once again, what I will say, so these Russian troops are actually kind of spaced out properly. And we probably can't see exactly why. We're going to skip ahead. But I will just tell you guys that these are spaced out sufficiently. And though it would be nice if they staggered as well. This trooper here could stand to go like here, right? So that way a single, let's say, grenade blast or ambush, right? Let's say someone is waiting for them in this building. It'd be very easy to engage those targets in a line. Boom, boom, oop, boom, 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 right? From the right field of fire. So you always want to be like staggered a little bit. But these guys are actually kind of moving tactically, which is impressive for Russians. So they're going to drop okay, wait, we'll fast forward. We don't want to see this, okay, we cannot quite see it, but what I will tell you guys in this grainy footage here is that one of these soldiers was able to walk away. Two appeared to have taken some level of injury. And the reason that is really relevant is obviously because that's exactly why you space out. And in fact, if the threat is drone strikes, you want to space out even further. Make it really hard to find the exact time where, make it really hard so that one small drone carried ordnance is not going to take out more than one soldier. So this is what's called TTPs, tactic, techniques, and procedures, and you do them in response to the actual threats on the ground. Every war has its own unique threats and unique dangers, and so you develop your tactics to counter them. Again, classic example, at one point, I remember when I was deployed, I had my soldiers, we had secured a compound, and some other commander came on scene and was like, well, if you guys get mortared, you'll get crushed. And I'm like, looking around, I'm like, guy, the enemy in this AO hasn't used mortars that we have records of. Like 8 years of records, there's been 0 mortar strikes. But what there have been are directed, coordinated ambushes at a distance. So, in fact, for us to create a secure compound, while it is a little bit more compact, it's in response to a threat that we actually know the enemy will use, not in response to a hypothetical threat that a hypothetical enemy might do. So these are the sort of things that you have to consider when you're developing your own tactics, techniques, and procedures, right? So Russia should look and say, yes, this spacing that we're doing might be sufficient for a grenade attack, but we need to train our troops to space out even further because of the frequent use of these basically carried mortars. And yeah, it requires retraining your troops. It requires instilling a really high level of discipline, and it's not clear that the Russian troops have that level of discipline or they have the military culture to instill that high level of discipline that's required. Of course, the final shot is some Ukrainian, looks like some troop transport helicopters going off into the fight. So Yeah, with a nice Stop Russia hashtag. So again, this is, of course, footage just of the worst of the Ukrainian, rather the best of the Ukrainian operations, I'm sure, or at least certainly the most dramatic. But it's important to note that this is part of the offensive too, right? This is part of the information operations, and one of their goals is to demoralize Russian forces, to show them scenes of them being sort of damaged, destroyed, or killed, right? This is how information operations can be aligned with kinetic operations. You know, as we know, Russians have phones, and those phones can access the internet just as well as anyone else's. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. As I talked about, right, this video almost certainly getting demonetized. I tried my best, but if you want to see the reactions to combat videos like this and even more intense, where I don't skip over anything, I break it all down for you guys, you want to become a member of the Patreon. Thanks to my Lieutenant Tier patrons. I'll see you guys in the next one.